Whoever think that in a startup you can take a break, I think you better don't do a startup. There's no break days, okay? So I think we basically we're on the go, 24/7. In fact, when I went into when we formed this company, we didn't realize that as well, especially me. I thought it would be like, your own company, you can, take it easy, unlike a corporate, you need to account to, your bosses, but no. It's actually more demanding.
Hi guys, and welcome to the Undefined Talk Show. Our aim of this talk show is simple. Through interviewing guests that have taken unconventional routes to get where they are, we want to show you that you don't have to follow a fixed route to get to where you want to. Some of our guests are students who are in industries traditionally dominated by adults. We also have tech entrepreneurs who may not even have a tech background. And if you're from Singapore or a traditional Asian country, you know that there is usually a fixed path that our parents tell us to take. In this talk show, we also interview individuals who are doing the coolest things, from setting up their own cafes to being artists and more. So sit back and enjoy the show.
Hello guys, welcome back to the Undefined Talk Show. I'm John here with my co-host Marcus. And this talk show, basically we interview people who are successful in many different fields, and we want to see how they got there despite the difficult circumstances that they were in. So today we are joined with a very special guest who also happens to be Marcus's mom, and she is basically one of the co-founders as well as the head of finance in a company known as Avanseus, where they work with artificial intelligence to predict when machinery might fail. So let's welcome Mdm Mei Lan.
Thank you very much for having me on your show. Yes, I would love to share my experiences with whoever would thinking of embarking on an entrepreneurship journey, especially in a high tech industry.
Okay, so maybe let's start things off by first asking, what do you actually do? Because me and Marcus tried to read up a bit about your company, but both of us couldn't fully understand what was going on.
Okay, so Avanseus basically was formed in 2015. A group of us from the telco industry basically came out from a corporate world and decided to embark on a company that deals with AI. So in 2015, I think AI is still pretty much a buzzword. Although AI has been around for a very long time, I think it's only in the last few years, or especially in the last 2-3 years, that it has really taken off in a very, very big way, especially with the onset of 5G. But when we started, it was still very much a buzzword, and because most of us are from the telco industry, and most of the founders, unlike the normal startup whereby you have very young entrepreneurs, this startup actually is a bit different because all of us are quite senior. So most of us, when we started, we are in our 40s, 50s. So we already have been working in the corporate industries, or in the corporate companies, especially big MNCs, for many years. So each of us has an average of about 20 to 30 years of experience in the telco companies, right, and in the MNC environment. So why do we come out, right? First, I think we are quite sick of the corporate world. We at least most of us are fairly stable already. We have seen the rise, and the peak of the telco industry, and we have also seen or rather we see it going into the sunset era. And being in the corporate world, innovation is, I think there is innovation, but whether you can bring it out commercially, sometimes it's a bit difficult because it's a big MNCs. So we thought, right, with a small company, and then with a small company, we could be more agile. We could, bring out that innovation faster and better to serve the customer needs. Having said that, right, and the second important reason is we didn't just come out and one day decided to have coffee and start a company. We didn't do that, right? So because we are already in the corporate world, we have a lot of us have dealt with all these telco operators. The solution that we came about actually was from a major problem statement by our customers. So we already knew, okay, there was this problem and it's a major problem. It's probably would not hit so much that, but it will probably hit our customers when with the onset of all this 5G, the new technologies, right? So we knew that there was a problem statement. So that's why, so we're very focused on developing that solution, and it's software based. We stay away from hardware, and we specifically target that problem statement. So that was 5 years ago. So you are right. So we are AI based company, and our current solution is actually a universal prediction engine. And our first solution is to predict faults in networks. And right now, our first set of customers are obviously telcos. Telcos meaning telecommunications companies, because that was the problem statements from them. And obviously, these are customers that we know because we come from that industry. So that is a long answer to your short question.
So I got a question. So I mean, you're my mom, but there's some things I still don't know. Okay. So maybe you can share a bit about like your background, like before you came into this, maybe even before like you were in the telco. Like what was your expertise? Like what do you do in university? Because I'm sure that a lot of people may think that okay, maybe you need some kind of entrepreneurship training to maybe start a startup or to do something new, right? You need training in that area. But maybe can you explain like what your background was and whether that was relevant in what you are doing?
Okay, so I was trained as an accountant. I did accountancy when I was in university. So when I came out, I went through the normal route of an accountant. I started with one of the big 6 or maybe one of the big 4 now, KPMG, is in the audit area. And then after that, I went to work for several MNCs, but always in the finance area. So in all these years, I mentioned before that I've been working for at least 20 plus years before I did my startup. But in all these 20 plus years, is and even now in Avanseus, I'm head of finance. So I've always been doing what I was trained for. So I'm just talking for myself, okay? Because I've been always doing what I've been trained for, and even you are doing what you're trained for, there will always be new things coming on board. There'll be always new areas to learn. So it's never that you can finish learning something even though you are in that specific field or whatever you call it, because there are always new areas to learn. So but with this 20 plus years of experience, it's not as if one day I decided to come out and said I want to do a company, because a lot of people, when I tell them that I have a startup, the first question they ask me is, oh, is it an accounting firm? Or is it a finance firm? Is it a consulting firm? So they are always very surprised when I tell them that no, it's a AI high-tech company. So it's actually very different from what I was trained for and what I was doing for the last 20 years. So the reason why I started this company with my co-founders was, so despite of my my so-called core skill sets, after I came out from the big 6 then, I have always worked in telco tech companies. So starting from HP, Hewlett Packard, Nokia, blah blah blah. So all these are in that kind of industries. So in those years, I know a bit, I wouldn't say a lot on the technology. I know the direction that the technology, that technology is going to impact our lives, both in the corporates and individuals in the future, on a very macro level. Okay, you don't ask me, all these technical components, I won't know. But in general, I know that's the direction, right? So, and also when I was in the industry, I know a few people that we think we can work with and who basically share the same ideas. And so after when I was in my 40s, a bit financially sound, so I decided to take the plunge. Okay, it's not like one day you wake up, I wanted to do this and then you do it. So the point I'm trying to make is, okay, first it wasn't a skill set that I was trained in, even though what I'm doing right now for my company is what I'm trained in. But the industry that I went into or set up my company for is very different from what I was trained in. So there's no hard and fast rule. I think it's just where the opportunity strikes, then you really think about it, where your cost and benefit analysis, your risks, and go for it, right? So when we went into it, we also know that the statistics in a startup, maybe 1 in 100 will persist. So for me, what I actually did was I set aside a sum of money, some resources, my opportunity cost. I really did my risk analysis and prepared for the loss. Okay, so if anybody were to go in and think that it's their road to riches, I only have one thing to say: it may be, but the statistic is not. It's against you. Okay, it's a very, very tough journey. And when you're in it, the reality is that the responsibility and the accountability is so much more than what you can possibly imagine. So for the first 3 years, it's a struggle, right? You need to develop your product and stuff. So you need capital. For us, okay? You need capital, obviously. You may not have sales, you may not have revenue. So you need to think about that. And then you have the opportunity cost as well. So I think I understand why a lot of young people would like to start, because the opportunity cost is much lower. But your passion, your age is obviously works for you, but your experience does not. You don't have that breadth of experience or that depth of experience. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't go for it. The other thing is, you should don't. My advice is, go in only when when your basic needs are taken care of. Otherwise, your mentality, your attitude would not be able to sustain you through the journey, and the journey is going to be very long. Okay, somebody wants to go in and think that they can get rich in 2-3 years. Again, I have to say that I think it's very tough to get rich in 2-3 years. The journey is very long. Okay, and like I said, statistics is not it's 1 in 100 maybe. So, but of course you have the passion. You have your dreams. Go for it if you have done your risk benefit analysis properly. Yeah.
Wow, that is a pretty long journey from starting off in an accountancy course to where you are at now. And it's pretty impressive that you managed to transfer the skills of accounting from your previous telco industry to the current industry that you are in now, which is AI.
Yes.
Yeah. So earlier you mentioned that the first question that people ask you is, what startup do you have? Do you have an accountancy firm? Or so maybe on that note, what is one stereotype that a lot of people have about accountants?
Accountants are boring, okay, especially if you talk to Marcus a lot. The first one to tell you that accountants are very boring. But I always tell people that, okay, even if you do an accounting degree, it doesn't mean that you need to be an accountant. I mean, take for me as an example, right? I started off as an accountant, sure, but it doesn't mean that my destination or my journey that I need to do accounting. There's so many things that you can do. Accounting, I think nowadays, whatever course you do, okay, whether it's accounting, whether it's engineering, whether it's whatever, okay, it's a skill set. So I think in the future world, there's no predefined role that you need to do, even though you acquire that knowledge or skill sets, right? Because in the future world, everything is quite flexible. Even the location that you work. So for example, in my company, or even in my previous company, I can employ accountants to do my books, but my accountants need not sit with me in the same room. I can engage an accountant in India, for example. Okay, even my audit can be done like that, because a lot of your books now are digital, online, cloud. Anyone can do an audit, right? Even your supporting documents are all digital. Most of them can be digitalized. So your skill set, what skill sets you want to acquire, I think it doesn't matter what kind of skill sets, right? You just need to have that skill sets, develop it, use it. The more you use it, the better you will be. And you can apply that to anything else that you want to do. Like take for me, for example. So I'm now in this startup. As you know, startup, you have to do a lot of things, right? Apart from your own skill sets. So for me, when we started, because it's a startup, resources are limited, cash is limited. So apart from finance, I have to look after HR, human resources, people. So people management skill is important. I have to look after legal. I have to look after sales sometimes. You need to support in the sales support team. So many things, business development, marketing, dealing with the investors. So all this, your skill set is just a basic stepping stone for whatever that you want to be, right? Or your end destination. In fact, I think a lot of us do not know what your end destination will be. But along the way, there'll be opportunities that will open up. So for me, right, for me and my advice to young people is look out for these opportunities, right? Some of them may not be worth your time, but there will always be one or two or a few that you should probably take a second or third look, where the risk benefit analysis. So again, I go back to your skill set, right? So your skill set, so the opportunities that come knocking may not be what your skill set is, but it may be associated with it. Then it's also an opportunity that you should consider, right? So what I'm saying is there's no fast and hard rules about what you should do, what you shouldn't do. It's about opportunities. It's about your risk and benefit analysis of that opportunity, what you like to do. Very important, because if you don't like what you do, then it's very hard to sustain the journey. That is very important.
Okay, so I got a question, which is, so when you enter this space, right? I mean, you mentioned also that like your founding team may not have the expertise in this area. So I'm sure like at the same time when you entered this industry, there probably would have been other similar businesses or providers that were trying to do the same thing or something similar. And these may have been maybe established long ago, or maybe they have like more funding. So how does it feel like, or what did it feel like to kind of like go against these giants?
When we started, like I said, it was a problem statement from the customer. So we knew that there was no viable commercial solutions out there. Although there have been claims by competitors, obviously, like what Marcus said, other companies who claim to be doing it, but we knew that there was no commercially viable solution then. So So in that respect, we were a first mover in providing that solution to the industry that we entered. Of course, having said that, competition will be never far behind. And in fact, right now, I think there are a lot of companies who who claim or who are, predictive maintenance companies. But because we have this first mover advantage, we are still a bit ahead of the game, especially in the vertical that we are playing. And every day we wake up, we are very cognizant of the fact that competitors are behind. So every day we need to stay ahead of the competitors. But also having said that, right, the pie enough in this industry is big enough to accommodate, I think, a lot of players. So on one hand, yes, we are obviously aware of the competitors and we want to stay ahead. But on the other hand, we know that this pie is big enough.
Going against all these big competitors, I'm sure that must have been a very, grueling process, in the sense that you might feel inadequate. Definitely, I have felt that when I'm starting out something new for the first time and there are people who are already well established in their field. So my question then is, how do you overcome that feeling of inadequacy or anxiety when you're starting something out, but there are already people in that field who are very established and really know what they're doing?
Okay, when you started something, you really must know what you're doing. Okay, I think that's the first thing. Okay, you may not be able to you may not have the perfect product, but at least you must know the problem statement, what you're trying to achieve. And I think the third, or not the third, but the most important thing is to establish that trust with your customers. So we got our first deal, and then the second deal, and the third deal. But very important, right? People may give you a chance, but don't squander that trust. Your product may not be, or whatever product, whether it's service, whether it's a hardware, whether it's a service, whether it's a software solution, it may not be perfect. But more important than the product is the trust that you need to keep with your customers. So it's also about service to the customers, right? So I think in the industry that we play, and I think I can safely say, for most corporates, maybe they will give you that opportunity. I think a lot of corporates now do recognize the importance of startup, so they may, and I think a lot of corporates will give that opportunity. So once you're given the opportunity, don't squander that trust. That's what I would advise. Yeah.
Okay, so like you mentioned just now that you did not have revenue for a few years, right? So how did you? So I mean, this is not only for startups, right? But it may be for people who are venturing into like their passion. For example, like could be anything like acting or doing art or whatever. And I'm sure like a lot of these the newcomers, they also don't get the gigs and the job opportunities at the start when they are just starting out. So how do you what would be your mindset when you are just not earning anything? Like what would you do, and what are some advice you would give to these people?
Well, I mean, I think this generation maybe have it a bit, I won't say a bit easier, but I think a lot of the parents can support the children nowadays, at least provide a roof over their head and food on the table. But I think a lot of people in my generation, we can't afford that. So I never thought of starting my own company when I graduated, because I need to, first is survival for ourselves, and not only survival for yourself, but a lot of us, I think in my generation also, when we came up, we need to provide at least, in some ways, for our own family. So again, I go back to my first, my first set of answer. You need to weigh your opportunity cost. You need to take care of your basic needs. Otherwise, it's very hard to have the mentality and the aptitude and the attitude to sustain that journey. Okay, you may love something that you may love, you have that passion, you have that dream. Yes, I know that because I went through it. But it goes down to the basic as well, right? So you need to take care of your basic first. So that's why I waited. I waited until I'm like in my 40s. I know that that my basic needs are covered. I told you I set aside some funds to do this. I know this is the amount that I can afford to lose. So then when I go in, I have that fortitude and mental that mental state to sustain that journey. So what Marcus said, yes, in the first 3 years it was very tough because there was no revenue, no sales. We still need to build the product. We need to take care of the employees. So it was tough, very tough, because although whatever money that you set aside, it will never be enough. So know that whatever your budget, right, you will always overrun because you'll never go according to your budget. So then what happens? So you need to raise money. That's why I said for startups, always know that when you go in, you are working on statistics of maybe 1% success rate. So know that, okay? And for those young, aspiring, adults that want to pursue those less conventional career, I definitely will encourage them. But I think they should also, maybe have, that mindset that take care of your basic needs first. I think that's very important to ensure that stability of mindset so that you can sustain the journey.
I think that's a very good piece of advice, and it definitely sounds like you covered all corners before you started your startup, in terms of...
For me, I did, yeah. But I also know that there are a lot of people that, went in, but you will always hear the successes. But what about those who have failed? Yeah, how many stories have you heard? The number of failures are, like I said, 99 to 1. But you hardly hear the failures. You only hear about that 1%. So sometimes, there's all this hype in the media. Obviously, it's good to celebrate success. But I think when you walk in, you need to walk in with that realistic sense of what is going to come. Yeah. So talk to people. I think it's very important. Talk to a lot of people. Like this one is good. But talk, apart from this kind of session, talk to other people who have walked through the journey, right? And whether it's success, whether they have failed, because even in failure there are lessons to be learned. So talk to a lot of people. That would be my advice.
Like you mentioned, I think it's important to have realistic expectations before you go in, right? Yeah, and for yourself, even though you did all these things of like setting out a sum of money for yourself, I'm sure there will still people who had doubts about your startup, or people who were telling you that you shouldn't do it. And I'm sure you would have faced some backlash in starting this. So maybe you can tell us more about that.
So that's why I said it's very important when you go into whatever you're doing to know what you're doing. Okay? So when we went in, we know that this is something that it will be required in the future. Maybe 3 years from now, 5 years from now, we do not know. Because that time nobody knew when 5G is coming. Everyone knows that it's coming, but when is it coming? Even now, it's still in the very early stage of 5G, right? But we know that this kind of solution will be required. But how to get it to be adopted in the market, how you get the customers to buy in, that is another question. So as to the sustainability, why we need to sustain it, is something that we believe in. And also we took fundings from shareholders. So there is also that sense of accountability and responsibility that you need to have with all your stakeholders. So not just your investors, but your customers, very important. That's why you don't squander that trust with your customers. If customers believe in us, we need to ensure that we delivered whatever we have said we will deliver. For the investors, the same. For your employees, the same. So it's all about accountability, responsibilities to the shareholders, your investors, your customers, your employees, even the external market out there. So important to know what you're doing. Yeah.
So you would say like it's because of the trust that made you ignore kind of like the doubts that other people have.
The trust and know what you are doing. Yeah.
see. Okay.
Because if you do not know what you're doing, all this negative feedback and all this whatever backlash will get to you because you're not confident.
Right.
It's only when you're confident of what you are doing, what you think you can bring a solution, then I think you can sustain the journey better. Yeah.
And also another question. So how did you land that first customer or bring in that first revenue? Like what do you think was the turning point?
Okay, so our so for our company, it's very much a B2B play. It's not a B2C play. So again, what we started is also not very it's not a common industry or common corporate to start in Singapore. Because I think in Singapore or this region, the main norms that people start out are the e-commerce, the logistics, maybe food, fintech. But what we started was this high-tech AI company,
And it's a bit like in the US.
That is something that you probably more associated with Silicon Valley or maybe the Europe, in Germany or Israel, somewhere where you have a lot of these deep tech technologies. But here we are, this group of people who didn't think better but started something like that, which is not the usual in Singapore. Of course, we wanted to do something different for Singapore, but again, like I said, that is the ideal, the dream, but reality is very, very difficult. So we end up having engineers not in Singapore, we're having engineers in India, elsewhere. Even our customers are not in Singapore, because like I said, it's pretty unique, right? It's very different from the other companies or the other startups. Even the investors don't really understand what we're doing. A lot of the investors, because they are comfortable in all this e-commerce, B2C play. So the first customer that we have, and because we have worked in all these industries for many years, so we have built up that trust when we were working in the MNC with this customer. So this customer know us as individual, so that trust is there. So that's why they are willing to give us that first business, because they know us as individual. So no matter what you do, right, always deliver. Whether you're in a corporate job, whether you are wherever you are, always deliver what you say you deliver, so that even when you come out, people will see you as an individual, not so much as your company, and people will give you the opportunity.
So you say that like even the stuff that is like unrelated in your past somehow became related.
Yeah, everything is connected.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
No matter what you do your best, and always deliver what you say. That's very important. Yeah.
I'm sure that getting your first customer is something that everyone in the company will be very happy about and proud of that achievement. But I'm sure there were also times where specific experiences where all of you had this collective idea that maybe this might not be working out, or all of you felt like, okay, is it time to really stop doing this and just to give up? So maybe you can share that experience, the first time where all of you kind of felt that this might not make it.
I think that was like about 2-3 years into the startup, when we didn't have money to pay our employees even. So we ran out of the cash. In fact, we owe the employees like 3 months. But our employees stuck with us, mainly because I think, like I said, a lot of us, or at least the founders, have been working in this industry for many years. We have our own, people know us, okay? I think we do, deliver what we say. So it was a rough patch, obviously, a very rough patch. We couldn't pay them basically for 3 months. But fortunately, in fact, all of them stuck with us. Nobody left, okay? And we have like 30 employees then. We have the customers with us, but like I said, it was still a cash crunch crisis. that time was the lowest point in the corporate in our startup experience. We didn't know what to do. Obviously, with crisis, you have stress, you have tension. There'll be different opinions. There'll be conflict within, the founders, among the founders. Confidence will be eroded. But always you need a leader. It's very important to have a very good leader that can lead the team, inspire the team, and move the whole team forward, despite whatever setbacks you have. In fact, I think you see a lot of the startups, right? It won't be a smooth journey. It will always be an up and down journey. But it's very important to find a good leader that can hold the team together in times of crisis and move this team forward. So I have to say that we have a very good leader. Yeah.
So the question that I have now is like, what is a major milestone that you achieve? I mean, maybe it could be the first revenue, which you already mentioned, or it could be something, but basically something that makes you and your team say like, okay, we made it. And what was your mindset then? Did you perhaps like feel like, okay, maybe we can take a break, or did you just feel like you can continue like,
Okay, whoever think that in a startup you can take a break, I think you better don't do a startup. There's no break days, okay? So I think we basically we're on the go, 24/7. In fact, when I went into when we formed this company, we didn't realize that as well, especially me. I thought it would be like, your own company, you can, take it easy, unlike a corporate, you need to account to, your bosses. But no, it's actually more demanding than a corporate, because corporate you don't need to worry about your cash flow. Here you need to worry about your cash flow, your employees, and all that kind of stuff. So it's always with you, whether you are sleeping, eating, whatever. It's a 24/7 responsibility and accountability. So there's no break. Okay, to answer that. Then what was your other question?
Like, how do you... Okay, so you mentioned there's no break, right?
There's no break.
And so what was like that initial milestone, and how did you like continue like to motivate your team, or to tell them basically like, we cannot like just take it easy?
Okay. Okay. So we do at least I do a lot of communication with my team. Okay. So communication is very important. Whether you are, no matter what you do, whether in a startup, corporate, family, whatever it is, communication. Always communication. Leadership. Good leadership. As to your question as to the milestone, obviously this is our 6 years of operation. We landed our first revenue in 2017. In fact, at the end of 2016, I think our first revenue was 26,000. Okay, so now fast forward now in 2021. Our revenue this year, we are focusing to close at 4-5 million. Okay, and we have customers from Latin America to Europe to Asia. So for within these 3-4 years, journey is very tough, but the satisfaction is, you see your company grow. Of course, sometimes it grows, and then sometimes it slides back a bit. I told you that, and then it will grow again. But as long as the company is, on the longer term is moving upwards, I think it's fine. You don't expect every day to be smooth. There will never be a smooth day. Every day will be filled with different challenges, whether it's customers, whether it's sales, whether it's working with your founders, whether it's cash problem. There will always be challenges, but the beauty of it is, as a startup, as one of the founders, you are in control. You should be in control. You're the one who find the solution. You are the one that make the destiny for this company. So that is, I think, the greatest satisfaction.
So we will say that it's just this mindset that, okay, we haven't reached like the maximum, that you just keep going despite maybe like reaching certain milestones.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and my question, I guess, is a bit related to what Marcus just asked. So, I mean, you gave us some figures in terms of the revenue from when the company started to now, and that's a very big growth, right? So, I guess then, how do you not let this growth kind of get to your head? You know, how do you prevent yourself from feeling like you have really, made it in that sense, one, and also how do you keep yourself grounded? You know, how do you not let yourself feel like, okay, I'm definitely the best at what I do?
You can't. Because, so with 26,000 or the first, 26,000 revenue, we have like maybe 20 people. Now we have 62 people. So even though you have revenue, your company is always expanding. So there's no like a point where you think that, you make it. No. Because you see, once you are in that company, the momentum will push you. Whether you like it or not, you can't stay static. You can't be happy with a one. I mean, you may be happy, but your company cannot stay static with a 1 million revenue every year. It doesn't make sense, right? So once you're in it, right, be prepared for that momentum to push you. So now, even though we are maybe 4 million company, maybe next year we are hoping for maybe double the revenue, but your cost will also move upwards. So every day you have that challenges. So now our challenges is recruitment, recruiting the right people. So previously we were only recruiting in India and Singapore. Now we have to recruit in Europe, in Latin America. How do you do that? So new challenges, right? Last time we don't have a HR expert to help us. Now we have to get that expert. And how do you, as a startup, you have limited resources. How do you get that kind of expert to help you, on your limited resources? So last time, I can deal with the legal documents because it's simple. Now you're dealing with all these customers, cross-border, this complicated tax. I'm still doing it, but I need external, more expert, support. So how do I get that resources? So what I'm saying is, once you're in it, the momentum will push you. There won't be a point where you say, hey, this is it. There won't. Even if your company get listed, there'll be different challenges. So there would never be a stopping point. Unless you quit lah.
Okay, so like you mentioned, like for starting your own thing, or in a startup in this case, like there'll be ups and downs, right? So I'm sure after like your first few milestones, there might have been a very significant downhill kind of thing. And you mentioned that one of them was when you couldn't pay your employees. But perhaps is there something else that was like really big downhill, and how did you, or maybe it could even be like what you mentioned about not being able to pay your employees in that point, but how do you kind of like motivate your team to keep going despite this?
I think I mentioned before, leadership, communication, clear communication, be honest with your people. I think it's very important. You need to be transparent and honest. So even when we couldn't pay them, we are very honest. I mean, we're very transparent. We told them there's no cash. I'm sorry. Obviously, the founders didn't take any pay them then because there was not enough. So they know that we are genuine. They know that we are sincere. They know that we are trying our best. But we also make it very clear that, there's no obligation to stay with us. Everyone is free to come and go. All right? But because they are with us, and they were with us at that point in time, again, I repeat, good leadership, clear, honest, transparent communication always are very important, and always have, if you share whatever you can share, what you can do, and more important, what you cannot do, what you really cannot do. I think they need to know so that they can make their own decisions, right? Yeah, so for us, I think that's what got us through. Okay, again, I stress leadership, communication. Fortunately, after that 3 months of nightmare, we got fundings, right? So some investors believe in us and put some funding, and that I think was the biggest turnaround, because by having that first source of institutional funding, it gives the company a stamp of legitimacy as well as confidence from the market. And I think that was one of the first inflection point. Of course, before that, the first inflection point was the first revenue. Second was this institutional funds, right? And the third was obviously the expansion to the other markets. The institutional funds are included, we have this government enterprise Singapore that also put money in us. So that gives the company a lot of confidence. So these are the two, if you ask me, the two main inflection points. First revenue, first institutional funds.
But there must have been let's assume right now you are back in that state where you can't pay your employees and everyone is just basically panicking, right? So is there any point where you might have said okay, you know what, we have to just shut down, and this might also apply to people who are in other industries. Is there a point where you would say, okay, this is just not working out and we should just close? Because it can't be you hold on forever.
Yes. I think shutting down should, as a startup, right? I think it should be the last option, but you should never rule it out as, you should never rule that option out. Because, like I said, you have to be very honest, right? If your product is not working, for example, and you try it for, 6 months or 1 year, it's still not working, and you may have tried with not just one customer, but with all your customers, then maybe it's time to face reality, right? But if your one customer feedback and say, hey, your product sucks, but 3 other customers say, okay, I think we can give it a go, then maybe there's some opportunity or some space or some that you want to give yourself some more time to test it out. So it's all about, again, risk-benefit, risk assessment. So I use this word very often. So when you are an entrepreneur, when you are running your own company, every day is about that risk assessment, risk analysis. You are doing that, whatever you're doing, it has to be always in your mind somewhere. Risk analysis, right? And risk-benefit analysis. So very important. So yes, I don't think it is a shameful thing to shut down your company. I think it's perfectly fine. Failure should never be seen as a shameful thing or embarrassing thing, because by failing, then when you go to your next venture or your next whatever you're doing, there are always things to be learned from that failure, and nobody can succeed at the first try. Okay, I think you need to fail a few times, and a lot of people fail a few times before they become successful. So failure in that sense, I think should never be ruled out, or should never be something that is shameful or nothing to be embarrassed about. Yeah.
Okay, I want to ask you a question about something you mentioned earlier. So you talked a bit about leadership skills and how having a leader is very important in times of adversity. So my question then comes down to, some people might have a more natural flair for leadership, but some other people who might be watching this, and myself included, sometimes may feel that we were not a born leader, or we might not have had many leadership opportunities in the past. So what are some ways for people like myself to develop these leadership skills? And also, as you transition from working in a corporate environment to co-founding a startup, how did you develop the leadership skills for yourself?
Okay, I think leadership skills, I do not know whether it's born or nurtured. I have no idea, but I can only share my own experience. When I started out, obviously I don't have all these leadership skills or whatever you call it. In fact, I couldn't even make a presentation without, feeling very nervous. In fact, I have stage fright making just simple presentations. But I think in order to overcome that, I just throw myself in that situation. Whatever that gives me that terror and nightmare, I put myself in that situation. And I feel that the more you are thrown in, the more you go through that experience, the more you are used to it, okay, to what you need to do, the fear, the stage fright, the nervousness, whatever insecurities you have, the more you go through that experience or environment, the better you get at it. So like right now I'm like 50 plus, right? Obviously I'm going through a lot of this. So now I'm, I wouldn't say I'm very good, but obviously I'm much better than when I first came out to work, right? So I do not know about born and nurture. Obviously some people are born to be a leader. I mean, you have a lot of those examples, right? Like maybe the Jack Ma's, the Steve Jobs, and all that. But the rest of the population, what about the 99% of us who are not born to have that leadership skill? So I would say that just throw yourself in that that situation or that experience, and then you'll get better at it.
So I guess this also applies to like people who are like trying out new things, right?
Yeah.
They should just feel comfortable in an uncomfortable position.
In fact, the more uncomfortable you are, and if you want to overcome that, find opportunities so that put yourself in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be my advice. Like I said, the more you go through that, the better you'll be.
Mm-hmm.
And exactly like I meant by failure, right? Because the more failure when you fail at something, you definitely will learn something from that. And then you apply that lessons to your next venture or whatever it is. And then, if that fails, then there'll be new things to learn. So it's all accumulation of experience and, skill sets. Yeah. So life is like that. It's just all about learning. Yeah. Picking up lessons from, your experiences.
So I guess I got one more general question, which is for somebody that would like to actually try something new, right? Or for somebody that basically would like to do something rather unconventional, like the convention in Singapore is like basically go through the whole education system and basically get a job in whatever you did. But I'm sure there's some people that may want to venture out of that, or maybe they feel stuck in something. Like, what would be your number one advice for these people?
I think first they need to know exactly what they want to do, and I think I can quote you some example. Okay, so I have a friend whose son, your age, Marcus' age. He did, I guess, okay, reasonably well in JC, and then he went to the army. Okay, he's one of those who are very relaxed. He's a very smart boy, but he's very relaxed type. But in the army, and then I do not know which function he was assigned, but he knows that he was doing some desk job, and then he was doing some some accounting or some accounting stuff or finance stuff, and he realized that it's something that he likes. Okay, so he told the parents that he doesn't want to go into university, even though he got a engineering course. He didn't want his grades. So his grades is good enough to go into one of the engineering course, which he was offered in one of the 2 top universities in Singapore. But having gone through that army experience, he knew that he wanted to do something in accounting finance. So, and very specifically, I think after some more time, he knew that he wants to go into this hedge fund company and in the finance function of that hedge funds company. So he was very specific. He knew exactly what he wanted. So what he did was he told the parents he didn't want to go to university. At first the parents were like, typical Singaporean or Malaysian or Asian parents, Asian I would say, most Asian parents, was like very upset. But he had a plan and he knew exactly what he wants to do. He said he wanted to do the SCCA course, and that was very tough, and that's still very tough. And with the view of getting into one of those hedge funds company. So he came out, all his friends, I think like Marcus and yourself, are still in the university. He took only 2 years. He already graduated because he knew exactly what he wanted. He went for it, studied full time. The parents was also very surprised because he used to be very relaxed type, right? He was so dedicated. He finished his course in 2 years. He applied for the company that he was aiming for, and guess what? He got a job because he was very specific, right? And he knew what he was going for. He prepared himself for 2 years to do that, and he got what he wanted. So what I'm saying is, yes, I think a lot of young people have all these dreams and ideals, but I also know a lot of young people have these dreams and ideals. 1 week you may have these dreams and ideals, or 1 month. Then the next 6 months it may be a different dreams and ideals. So if you don't really know what you want, then my advice is it's better to go through the conventional route, which is the university and whatever. But if you really know what you want, then you would need to formulate a proper plan, execute it properly, and then go for what you want, right? So I think and it does not apply to everyone. Everyone is different. So know yourself first before you go and chase that dream. It's very important to know yourself first. Yeah.
I have a bit of a linked question to the answer that you just said. So you might have already given some of these answers in your current one, but for some people, for example, one person that I know did a law degree, but during their law degree, in the later parts of the degree when they were doing internships and stuff, they realized they really don't want to be a lawyer. Okay. So they don't know what they want, but they know what they don't want for sure. Okay. So they know that with absolute certainty they don't want to be a lawyer, but they don't have a specific dream or a goal in mind yet. So for people in these sort of situations, would you tell them it's better to just stick it out and finish it despite how uncomfortable they feel with it? Or would you say it's okay to explore different interests and then try and go for the dreams, like try and target their dreams later on?
Okay, so very good. Okay, as a parent, my advice to your friend would be, because you do not know what you want, so please finish your degree, because it will be a skill set. Okay, and I have also told Marcus this before. Always good to have a skill set, a legitimate skill set, especially if you do not know what you want. So you may not want to be a lawyer, fine. It doesn't matter, right? But at least you have that skill set of a lawyer. For me, right now, do I use my accounting, bookkeeping knowledge? Not really. Because I'm running a company, although I'm head of finance, but do I do my books? I don't. Right? But the knowledge of it helps me. I get other people, right, to do my books, right? I engage my, my corporate, my auditing firm, my consulting firm to do the actual work. But because I have that knowledge, I know what they're doing, so, it helps me, right, in determining, right, whatever that they're doing for me is on the right track or not. So I may not know the details. For example, tax, right? Tax is so specific, right? I'm not an expert in tax, but because I learned that in school, and I pick up a bit here and there in my corporate world, in my corporate life. So when now I am setting up my own company and I have all these customers who are overseas and I need to deal with my own company taxation, I still need my tax experts, to advise me do my tax work. But at least I know, that whatever they're doing is on the right track, right? Because it's a skill set that I have, but it doesn't mean that I need to use it in my work. And when you walk the journey of life, any skill sets that you accumulate is good skill sets. It doesn't matter whether it's a lawyer, whether you're doing culinary course, whatever you're doing, it's your skill set. That skill set stays with you, not with anybody else. And especially when you do not know what you want, okay? So for your friend, my advice to your friend is please continue and finish your degree, right? Because you'll be with you, nobody else. And I think next time when you come out, you want to do something else, it will be useful. I have no doubt it will be useful, especially a law degree. And even if it's not a law degree, let's say you're doing a culinary course, it will also be useful, right? I don't see why it won't be, because you'll be a professional chef versus somebody tinkling around in the kitchen, right? You'll be a lawyer versus somebody, oh, I've only been to law school for 2 years, so what? But this is for your friend, right? That he doesn't know in general what you want. So finish it. Then after that, when you come out, there'll be a lot of options. And then along the way in your life, then you can start to venture out. So for me, right, I like history. I like, art history. But I didn't have the opportunity to do that. But now that I am more financially stable, I can then indulge it as my hobby. So you don't necessarily need to follow your dreams like the first step out of your career, right? It can also be your hobby.
Okay, so my final question is really about, because I'm sure there's some people that might look up to you, or maybe someone else in maybe your position. So what advice, so let's say someone has this ambition to want to get into tech, or to build a tech startup, or something to do with AI or whatever. What is one piece of advice that you would give them?
I think, okay, so for me it's very unconventional because I don't know tech, but my partners do. So we have complementary strengths. So if you yourself are not a techie person, but that would be my recommendation, because I think you have to build on your strength. So if you want to go into a tech startup, and if you are still young and you're still going to university, then do a engineering course or something. Okay, it's always important. I think it's very important that you have that core skill sets to go into whatever field you want. But for me, it's a bit different because I work in that industry for many years. So even though I don't have the technical skill sets, I know the general trend and where the industry is going, the customers' requirements and stuff like that. So a bit on the tech market, right? But I also find partners that have complementary strengths. So I have a head of technologies, also co-founder. So they do their development, their R&D, but they don't have the finance background, skill sets. So then they depend on me. So you can also do that. So you have a few, partners that have complementary strengths, and then form that unit. That can also be done. Having said that, working with other people is always very difficult. Whether you are good friends, no good friends, but when you start to work together as a business, and all individuals are very different. You have different mindset, different way of thinking, different perspective, different strength, different weaknesses. So it's always very difficult to be on the same page. So as a unit, so if you want to form that unit, my advice is don't have too big a group, because already it's very difficult to work with another individual, right? But you need to work with other individuals. That you can't escape from that, because one person cannot do everything. But don't have too big a group. Find somebody that you can trust, and probably the same, and not probably, but it has to be the same end goal, same vision. Along the way, that vision may go different path, but the general vision, the general end goal should be about the same. And always about people that you can work with, people that you can trust, people that you feel comfortable. If the people that you don't feel comfortable, please don't even bother. Yeah. So 2 ways. Whatever field, if you want to go into tech startup, my advice for young people, then you go and do some engineering course. You yourself need to know what you're doing. That would be the best. Cannot, if you're already halfway there, get complementary strengths, form a unit, then go for it. Yeah.
final question is that when you're doing something unconventional, something new, or when you're starting something up from the start, right? There's a common saying that it's a very lonely journey, right? Because maybe you're the only one that may understand what you're going through, or something like that, right? So what kind of advice would you give to someone that is facing this kind of like lonely feeling, or may feel like he or she is the only one that really understands? Like, what kind of advice would you give to this person?
I think talk to other people, have your mentors. I think there are a lot of people who can be good mentors. Talk to your peers. Don't have that one track mind. Okay. Yes, I think it can be lonely, especially if you are young, because once you're in it, right, you suck up all your energy, all your time, all your effort, and sometimes you may feel that your peers may be out there partying, or have very stable corporate jobs, and here you are maybe struggling, but having said that, there will be other people who are in your same boat, right? Who can give you encouragement, people who have walked through the journey. So have mentors. I think it's very important to have mentors, people that you can look up to, people who can give you a helping hand once in a while, people who are in the same company as you. Those are usually people who join you, okay, in your journey or in your startup, would probably be the people who will stick with you, okay? So like I said, right, in my company, we have that crisis. There's this group of people that stay with us till today. Obviously, you need to take care of them, and obviously we're very grateful. But these are the people who join us from the beginning, right? So you need to treat those people who are with you sometimes as your family, because it's actually a family when you do a startup of sorts. So yes, you could be the main founder. You need to provide that inspiration. You need to provide that leadership. It can be lonely, but I can't deny that it will be a lonely journey. It may be a lonely journey, but you have all these other people that you can tap on. Your mentors, your peers, your co-founders, your people who work with you and for you. And of course your family.
Okay, so thank you everyone for watching this episode of the Undefined Talk Show. So I'd like to thank our guest, Mdm Ng / my mom, who has kindly came down here and spent her Saturday morning with us to share more about her experiences. So thank you. And if you like this episode and you like this series, do remember to give us a like. And if you have any questions for Mdm Ng, you can also write them in the comment section below. If not, do remember to subscribe to our channel to actually see more of these kind of interviews. And if you have any other suggestions for us, please remember to leave them in the comment section below. So if not, that's it, and thank you guys for watching.